Good morning, friends. Welcome to the Block Thrasher Morning Brew, brewing up the hottest cup of cryptocurrency news. Join me as we perambulate through the cryptocurrency space. This is our word of the day, perambulate. P-E-R-A-M-B-U-L-A-T-E. Perambulate. It means to walk or to travel, to stroll. Perambulate. It's a good one. All right, let's look at the market. Ouch! Down 3.1% on the total market cap to $1.3 billion. Yeah, it's a little bit painful out there right now. Absolutely. Not going to lie. Bitcoin dominance is at 44.7%. Ethereum is at 16.6%. Gas prices are super low, though. 18 GWAY for standard. So maybe that'll bring you a little bit of encouragement. I was thinking about this as I was perambulating just the other day about the market in general. And what is it? What's going on? What's going on here? And, it's interesting because here's my take on the whole situation right now. We see this pattern happen over and over again within the cryptocurrency space where Bitcoin starts to go up. It goes up significantly, and a ton of retail investors suddenly get excited. Same thing happens in the stock market. And then it's driven up. There's all kinds of hype, right? And typically speaking, the whales are selling into that. Selling at the all-time highs. The institutionals probably doing the same. Evidence shows. And then some kind of event happens. Like this time around, there's the China mining ban thing. And FUD starts to come out. FUD comes out like crazy. And there's this clear, if you follow the news every day like we do here on the Block Thrasher Morning View, there's this concentrated effort to drive the market down and to scare the crap out of everybody and get everyone to capitulate and eventually just throw up their hands and say, okay, I'm done. And sell. Many sell at a loss. Because these retail investors, the people that came in with the whole DOGE hype, meme coin hype, etc., they have these expectations, these hopes they're going to make a ton of money, and then they don't, and they've actually lost a bunch of money, and they're just like, all right, I'm done with it. And it's at that point, that's the time to buy, by the way. But it's at that point that the whales and the big institutional investors are going to come back in and they just buy the living crap out of it. And the cycle starts over again. And so there's this process where the big players continue to fleece the little people, the retail people, the uninitiated, those who don't pay that much attention or who just follow the crowd. We'll call them the sheeple, right? But what's interesting about it this time around is, yes, we have seen a significant decrease in the cryptocurrency market as a whole because we're at $1.3 trillion and we were up at over 2, right? Bitcoin's down 40%, close to 50% from the all-time high. Yeah. But it's not going as low as it has in the past, at least not yet. Now, could it? Obviously, it could. But what I'm observing, and this is just my anecdotal observation based upon what's happening with the market, also based upon the news out there, is that many of those smaller fish, right, that normally would be sheeple, they've learned a little bit and they're holding tighter and they're not capitulating as easily. A lot of that's already happened. A lot of people are already out. If we go and look at the amount of money that's in Tether, right? We got $61 billion in Tether. USD coin now up in the top 10 with $26 billion. And then at number 10, Binance USD at $11 billion. So clearly a lot of people have gone into the stable coins as they've likely sold off their crypto because they've, and most likely, many of them at a loss. Now, obviously not everyone, but many. All right, let's move on to the news of the day. Enough of that thought. Our first story comes from beincrypto.com, and this is coming from an attorney for the Federal Reserve and professor at Yale. I have a feeling that we're going to be hearing a lot more and talking a lot more on the Morning Brew about stablecoins moving forward. These stablecoins like USDT, Tether, and USDC and others are getting a lot of attention. Getting a lot of attention from regulators. And it's partly rightly so, because the fact of the matter is that the potential is there with these stablecoins for fractional reserve type banking, which happens in the regular financial world, and everybody's become okay with it and become fine with it. But the reason everybody's okay with it is because the government steps in, the Federal Reserve steps in and provides a surety that not if, but when a bank run occurs, they're going to come in with the FDIC insurance and they're going to do bailouts if necessary or whatever. They're going to protect that system. So what regulation is really about, I mean, it's about a couple things. I mean, it is about like making some rules and saying, look, if you're going to have a stable coin, you're a private company, you've issued a stable coin like Tether, you have to have some kind of backing, and we're going to decide what that is. We're going to tell you what that is. We're going to dictate what that is. But when they do that, they're then also going to have to come in and bail them out if it turns out that they don't have enough liquidity or they don't have enough backing, they don't have enough reserve on hand. So again, double-edged sword. Yeah, it probably could in a way bring some protection for consumers out there. But what would be better than all of that would be a stable coin that is actually verifiable programmatically, so that we don't need the regulatory entity to ensure trustability and reliability. And I believe this is what Charles Hoskinson is talking about, and this is why I think we're going to be talking a lot more about that. What we essentially need is a DeFi, decentralized financed version, algorithmically provable stablecoin that has reserves. This is going to be a brilliant thing if this happens. So this attorney and professor at Yale, of course, is suggesting that these stablecoins need a lot more oversight and a lot more government control. He states that privately produced monies are not an effective medium of exchange because they are not always accepted at par and are subject to runs. In the report, they present proposals to address the systemic risk created by stablecoins, including regulating stablecoin issuers as banks and issuing a central bank digital currency. I'm not going to go through all of this. If you want to take a look at it, you can. But it's interesting because the same article was used by Paul Krugman once again to, I say once again, Paul Krugman used, is coming out again, once again, to say that cryptocurrency is going to fail and that it's, evil and all these other kinds of things. I mean, there's no person out there more negative toward the whole space. But what's interesting about this is, here's a story about China and China's digital yuan. And what's interesting is we see this thing shaping up here internationally, where China is becoming the most anti-crypto nation state. And this could be a very, very good thing. And the reason, to me, why it could be such a good thing is because it so sharply illustrates how those who do not like freedom, the communist, dictatorial, authoritarian state that is China, when they come out and they do everything they can to quell and squash and destroy crypto and to create their own, which is what they're trying to do as a replacement, it creates such a clear and vivid picture that it's that type of government that wants to do away with the types of freedom and innovation and individual sovereignty that crypto potentially brings. And so it's good in that sense, because it makes it such that when U.S. regulators look like the Chinese, that could be very bad for them, theoretically speaking. Although, who's to say? We've got so many people, it seems, in our society today that really have lost the desire to hold on to the freedom that so many people fought and died and bled for over so many years of our history. So China's digital yuan moves a step closer with smart contract technology. The central bank, in an apparent push for adoption ahead of Olympics, is doubling up on warning over non-state cryptocurrencies. China's central bank has spelled out terms for the latest progress in its development of a state-backed digital currency as it continues to push ahead with trials of the ECNY, as the currency is known. This is interesting that they want to bring smart contract programmability to the ECNY. The bank said that ECNY would obtain programmability from deploying smart contracts that don't impair its monetary functions and which could facilitate business model innovation. I'm just going to drop one thing here right now with this. I believe that if the founding fathers had been able to look into the future, there's a couple of things that they would have done differently, that they would have included within our Constitution and in the structure of our government system. You may be aware that we have this concept called separation of church and state. However, it's not actually enumerated in the Constitution that way. There's no separation of church and state, but what it does say is that the government shall not infringe upon the free exercise of religion. So the idea is that the government shouldn't be determining what we believe by controlling religion. And the founders of the U.S. recognize that when the government becomes the church, you have a problem, because then the church becomes tyrannical, and people's heads started getting chopped off when they didn't believe what they were supposed to believe, and these sorts of things. Well, there's other mechanisms of control, and education and money are two of the other biggest. And the government has increasingly, over time, stepped in to provide these things, to control these things. If they can control education, they can control what a populace thinks. And if they can control money, they can control who has and who does not. And so I think that there would have been separation of church and state, separation of school and state, and separation of money and state. With these three things, one can ensure, or hope to at least, prevent tyranny. Well, obviously, China is a great example of the opposite. They're going to control absolutely everything. There's no religious freedom, there's no economic freedom, and there's obviously no education freedom there either. There's just really no freedom at all. So what are they going to do with the CBDC and this programmatic, the smart contracts on, it potentially some very draconian and negative types of things, like social scores, based on whether or not you can actually buy and sell based upon your current social score, right? So, scary stuff. Do you believe that Bitcoin, moving on, is going to reach 100,000 within this year? A poll posted on Twitter by Sentiment said 41.4% of everyone that responded with 3,087 votes said, yeah, we think it's going to reach 100,000 this year. Interesting. What do you say? Grayscale's CEO says that Grayscale is 100% committed to turning GBTC into a Bitcoin ETF, and he thinks it'll happen. He thinks it's just a matter of time. So let's keep watching that. I'm going to leave you with one last article of the day. It's one that brings a little bit of encouragement, maybe. According to Will Clemente, on-chain analyst, he believes that a Bitcoin rally is incoming. Will Clemente says that a Bitcoin supply shock could ignite a significant BTC rise. This is what he said. Hang in there, guys. This thing is going to pop soon. Supply shock still in play this week. Clemente's bullish stance on BTC comes as he sees on-chain signals pointing to the rise of Bitcoin adoption around the world. Extremely bullish on global Bitcoin adoption. The analyst adds that Bitcoin's illiquid supply ratio has been in a steady uptrend since the COVID-19 pandemic-induced sell-off of March 2020. According to Clemente, the ratio can be calculated by dividing Bitcoin's liquid supply by its cumulative or increasing supply. Yeah, if you look at that chart, that's true. It's just going up sort of parabolic. Here's a really interesting long-term chart. Following March 2020, record money supply expansion changed investors' behavior in the Bitcoin market. This metric shows the trend in the number of illiquid coins relative to overall supply. More coins are being locked up than ever. Clemente also highlights that whales, or entities holding between 1,000 and 10,000 Bitcoin, have been on a buying spree since the beginning of July. The analyst says that these deep-pocketed investors have added over $240 billion worth of Bitcoin to their holdings in the last 14 days. Bitcoin whales have added 76,444 Bitcoin to their holdings in the last 2 weeks. Wow. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there, friends. Today I was going to jump into another discussion on inflation, the insidious thief, but I am out of time. And I promised y'all that these would be about 15 minutes in the morning, so you can consume them easily. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you tomorrow. We'll pick up there, and then talk to you soon. Appreciate y'all. Bye now.